can't just master shooting on a super clear sunny day and have it all figured out, because the next time you go to shoot, it's not going to look like that. Every single time it's different, and every single time your clients are going to be in different colors, so it's all going to play differently together, and you're probably going to be at different locations each time. So knowing how to approach every single situation, I know that if I show up, I'm going to be able to work with whatever I have in whatever location I have.
Hey, welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Raymond Hatfield, and today we're chatting with family photographer Sarah Wagner about finding and honing your own style while adapting to client needs. But first, the Beginner Photography Podcast is brought to you by CloudSpot. With CloudSpot, you can impress your clients with a beautiful gallery that is easy to view, share, and download on any device. You can also control image size, add a watermark, and download limits as well. So grab your free forever account today over at deliverphotos.com and only upgrade when you are ready. So today's guest, Sarah Wagner, is a family portrait photographer and wedding photographer who has found her way from family photographer to weddings to doing both, from having a clear style to learning to be more flexible to meet client needs. I think the point here is that her journey has not been a straight path, right? Like many of us. But there's this idea when we're new to photography that you have to have it all mapped out so that you just got to follow this path. But it's, the journey that Sarah has been on is not something that could have been written down in a business plan when she first started. She had to learn to roll with the punches. And today she has created a photography business that is now strong and resilient because of that. So today Sarah is going to teach how to be both flexible and adaptable, the importance of continual learning to open up more doors for you, and how to balance art with business. And remember, you listen to the podcast to learn from the world's best photographers. Do not take that lightly. Put what you learned today into practice. Take action. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. So take something that you learned from today's interview with Sarah Wagner and apply it to your own photography, hobby, or business. With that, let's go ahead and get on into this interview with Sarah Wagner. So Sarah, my first question for you is, when did you know that photography was first going to play an important role in your life?
Yeah, I think it was more so a year or so after I graduated college. I was working at an advertising agency at that time, and while I had always loved photography, it never ever crossed my mind that I would be a photographer, because I think most people don't ever assume that photographers make any kind of decent living. And so it was just not even on the table for me. It was like, I'm going into business, I'm going to make money, I'm going to be in marketing, I'm going to be a CEO, I'm going to own my own company, something, I'm going to make money. And that photography didn't line up. So after a couple years working at an advertising agency and realizing just how rough that life was and how much work I was going to be doing, I started to kind of think a little bit differently about my future. During this time, I also went through a really difficult time with my mental health, and just that all kind of accumulated from working multiple jobs because I was trying to chase the world's version of success, trying to make as much money as possible. So while I was working at that agency, I was also waiting tables at night and coaching a cross-country team on the weekends. So that kind of just led me to a big place of burnout in my personal and professional life. So I took a major step back in 2019, towards the end of 2019. And during that time, I was just kind of healing my body, healing my mind, working with a therapist, trying to get back to who I was, trying to figure out who I even was. And so during this time, I had a lot of extra time on my hands. I was still working at the agency, but I needed something to do with all the other hours. So that's when I was like, you know what, I'm really going to look into photography a little bit more. So I started playing around, trying to figure out how to shoot in manual. I'd obviously been using cameras a lot with my advertising job, but I didn't really know what I was doing. So I decided to learn that. And it was during that time that I got an ad for a Facebook ad for a photography course. And that just kind of opened my eyes up to the possibilities that not only could I make a really decent living off of photography, but I could also be a teacher. And then I was like, okay, this kind of like marries like my two passions of being a business owner, like having an impact, like doing something with my hands, but also doing a lot of business type marketing things. And you also get to make a difference. So it was like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. I just kind of like started focusing on it from there. I shifted to a different job, moved on to the corporate world, thinking that would be better than the agency life. It wasn't. So that was a clear answer. Okay, I'm definitely supposed to be my own boss. I worked at that job for 2 years. That was when I moved down to Florida at that same time. So I was kind of building my photography side hustle for a year. And then a year after I had started it, it just had to come to that decision of, do I keep going down this path, or do I prune some things so I can give these other things room to grow? And so that kind of led me to being a full-time photographer. It was not a decision that I always knew I wanted to, or wasn't a thing that I always knew I wanted to do. It just kind of over time, a few different life circumstances led me to here.
First of all, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. And I think a lot of listeners can relate to that because it sounds like photography for you was almost a creative release, in a time where you needed some additional space. And a lot of listeners get into photography for the same reason, to have something creative that they can do, some sort of outlet. But it also sounds like you kind of knew early on, you're like, while this is creative, this can also generate income and kind of change my life. So can you talk to me about how maybe you approached what style of photography that you wanted to pursue? Because there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, and that's actually a dynamic question for me, because the course that I had seen an ad for and that I had purchased early on was for family photography. It was a family photographer. And so at that time, I didn't want to go into weddings either. I just didn't think I liked weddings. And so I was like, okay, I'll do families because this lady's making bank off of family photography. So I'll do that. Seemed very laid back. So I only focused on families for the entire first year in business. I only photographed a couple, like maybe one or two couples that entire year. And after I'd photographed those couples, I was like, oh, wow, this was actually really fun. It was way less stressful. I'm not chasing kids around. Like, I have time to get creative because I'm able to really pose and position and be thoughtful because I'm not just trying to capture the moment. And so then I kind of realized that I actually really liked photographing couples. Then I decided maybe I don't dislike weddings. Maybe it was just the weddings that I was seeing. Then I started kind of dabbling in weddings and kind of learning what types of weddings that I really like to photograph. And I realized I don't like budget low-end weddings. I don't like when I have to be the wedding planner, the dress steamer, all the things, and the photographer. That was not fun for me and wasn't appealing.
No.
So I had done a couple of weddings as an associate and a second shooter that were more high-end, where there were planners, and I was like, okay, I could do this. Like, this is fun. This is relaxed. I've got a lot more time to be creative and capture these moments, and somebody else is handling all the organization and stuff. So then I kind of fell in love with couples. And so I've kind of had this like back and forth, like, I don't know what I'm really supposed to focus on, and I'm not really sure that I'm supposed to only focus on one thing. I think that is niching down is important, and I think that's what helped me grow so quickly, was because it was only focused on families, and I grew at record speed. But then I realized that I didn't really give myself a chance because I was so focused on growing so quickly. I didn't really give myself a chance to try all the things and decide what I really, really, really loved. So I kind of put myself in a difficult position because now I've got this amazing family photography business that is a well-oiled machine, and trying to start from scratch and build a wedding business, which is a totally different animal. How you grow a wedding business versus how I grew my family business, completely different. It's all about who you know in the wedding industry, which means I got to be out shaking hands, having meetings, just like setting up
Kissing
style
babies.
shoots,
Yeah.
kissing babies. Like, you got to be the very charismatic person who's getting to know the planners, getting to know the venue owners, and all those things. And I have built this life where I don't want to have to go out and do things. And I don't have to with my current business. People come to me because I put the whole work in to build the marketing systems. So I don't have to go out and do that stuff. I get to, my clients come to me, they book me. I don't really talk to them until we show up and do the shoot because I've got all the systems built out. So I've got all the information I need, and I made it easier for them and I made it easier for me. I think what I love and what I'm going to focus on is going to kind of be a little fluid throughout my life, because as my life changes and adapts, what I want to do changes and adapts. So right now I don't have kids, so I don't feel as drawn to family sessions, although I still enjoy them. But I know that the minute I have a baby of my own, I'm going to want to be back doing family sessions. And while maybe in this current season, photographing 1 or 2 weddings a month and making what I make for a whole month in family sessions sounds really nice. But as soon as I have kids that are out in sports every weekend, I'm going to want to be with my family. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to go all in on either of those. And well, I guess I'm already all in on families, which is totally fine. But I have kind of gone back and forth and just tried to be flexible with what I need and where my life is taking me and not pinhold myself to only do a certain thing. But I will say I obviously am primarily with families, and I do enjoy families, and I think I will always be a family photographer who also takes on weddings sometimes too. But it's always changing, it's always dynamic because I'm always changing, I'm always dynamic.
Right. Yeah. We can only hope to always be changing and be dynamic. It's funny because it's like I guess I wouldn't say most, but it's like a very common path is you get into weddings strictly because of the money. It seems like such a big payday for one day of work, quote unquote. And then as you get that all set up, then you transition into families because now all your couples who you photographed are now having families. And then you kind of get into that. But you went the exact opposite. You started on the families. And that definitely makes the marketing aspect much more difficult for you to get into weddings because, I mean, yeah, it's the opposite. It doesn't happen very often where you start a family and then you get married, but sometimes it does. Anyway, again, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's one of those things where like listeners are going to understand that like there's not just one path. You don't have to start here if you want to get to there. You can kind of do whatever. But I want to go back to those earliest days as a family photographer for you. Kind of walk me through like those first sessions you had. Like I want to know because you got into it knowing that you wanted to get into family photography. So tell me about some of those first family photography sessions. When you look back at those images, as you said, you grow, you become more dynamic. So when you look back at those first images, what stands out to you as maybe an amateur mistake or something that you definitely wouldn't be doing today?
Yeah, I think the biggest things that stand out to me, and it's really not so much in the posing or anything, because my posing style was based off of what that other photographer was teaching, which was extremely fluid, extremely storytelling, essentially no posing. So I followed that system. I've actually kind of steered away from that recently, which we could talk about later. But as far as what I see, the biggest change and the biggest difference is just in the quality of my images, which primarily has to do with just my knowledge when it comes to shooting and dealing with every single different lighting situation. Because that is one of the most challenging things when you're first starting out, because every single time it's different. You know, you can't just master shooting on a super clear sunny day and have it all figured out, because the next time you go, the next time you go to shoot, it's not going to look like that. Every single time it's different, and every single time your clients are going to be in different colors, so it's all going to play differently together, and you're probably going to be at different locations each time. So knowing how to approach every single situation, and it's something that, because I didn't have good education on that, I was having to learn every single session. So every single session, okay, did this go well? Do I feel like this went well? I mean, you know, the clients never thought any different. They always were happy, thank goodness. But I am a really tough critic. And so I would say, oh, I really didn't like this session. And I'd have to ask myself, why? Why don't I like this session? Was it because of the outfits they were wearing, or was it because it was the weather? It was just kind of gloomy and they had weird shadows on them. Like, you know, what could I have done better so that I like this session and it fits my version of what I want to present to my clients? And so that was one of the things that I've really noticed, that like now, you know what I mean? I don't even stress. I don't even look at the weather. Like I know that if I show up, I'm going to be able to work with whatever I have in whatever location I have. I've got all the tools in my mental toolbox that I need to be able to achieve exactly what I want to achieve, no matter the lighting situation or the outfits that I'm presented with. And so I think that's the biggest difference that I see when I look back at my older work versus now. I'm like, I can look back and literally look at an image and say, I shouldn't have been standing here. I should have had them facing this way, or I shouldn't have shot this early. I should have waited 30 more minutes. I can look back and see those, I don't want to say mistakes, because when, you know, you don't know yet until you do it. And then you do it right, and then you see side by side, oh, okay, I see what went wrong there. Or unless you have somebody who can tell you. And in this industry, it's kind of hard. It's not one of those industries where you can just be an apprentice to someone very often. If you ever get an opportunity to do that, take it.
Do it, yeah.
You're usually just figuring things out on your own, unless you invest in education or something that's going to teach you those things quickly. But for me, it wasn't like that, because I couldn't find that education. And I also didn't quite know what I was missing either at that point. So
So then let me ask, because I want to know, like, how did you figure that out? How did you make those changes so that you knew, oh, maybe I shouldn't have I should have waited 30 minutes, or I should have turned them this way? Because you had mentioned going through this family photography course. I'm sure that it talked a bit about posing, maybe even time of day. And yet, when you look back at your work, there's still these areas of improvement. So when you look back at those photos, was this a lack of education, or was it just a lack of experience? Was it a lack of knowing what your own personal style was? What do you think it was? Where was that gap?
So the course was specifically on editing, and it had a few behind the scenes videos, where you could kind of learn that storytelling posing style, but the rest was primarily editing. There was not much education at all on lighting or those types of
The important things.
Those are kind of the basics, right?
Yeah.
So, and this was, early 2020, or maybe it was 2019 when I actually bought it. I don't know. When digital courses were very new, that wasn't like there was a gazillion. Like now there's a lot of courses, but back then there really wasn't. So I didn't have that basis. So for me, it just took making mistakes and doing it over and over and over and over. And I didn't know until I did it right. And then I would say, oh, okay, now I get why those ones didn't come out well. So it was just trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. Every single time I shot, the lighting was different. Every single time I got a different outcome. So really just trying to hone in on when things were going right, what was going right, and when things were going wrong, what was going wrong, and figuring out what I could, if there was anything that I could do to fix that in the next time I had that lighting situation or whatever. So It took, I would say, honestly, about 1.5 years till I felt like I was confident that pretty much any situation I would be good. Natural light anyways. So 1.5 years of trial and error, doing lots and lots of shoots to figure it all out and to feel like I had a really good grip on it.
That's a really important thing is to know lighting. And I think that a lot of photographers overlook that in the beginning. So I guess 2-part question. Did you overlook that? Like, how did you understand the importance of lighting? Was it again through just experience and seeing, oh, this is what good light does? Or was there more that you were trying to learn?
I didn't know at first. It wasn't like, I was brand new photographer. Like I didn't realize how important light was at first. And then I think how I honed in on that was the missing piece, was that I knew I had the storytelling posing style. Box checked. Their outfits were good. I was making sure they were wearing good colors and everything. That box was checked. So it was like the only other thing here that's changing every time that could be affecting the outcome of my images is the lighting. And because I live in Florida and I was primarily shooting on the beach, which is very difficult light for a new photographer if you don't know how to handle it. I could very clearly see when I had the light good and when I had the light bad, right? Like if you're shooting in an area where the sun is mostly blocked, like you're not going to notice that drastic of a difference between, an image where the light was used well and not. But when you're shooting out on the beach, like, like the image is either completely washed out, you can't use it, right? Or there's good contrast. And I had a high contrast editing style. And so I could see like, okay, that image is not good. And what did I do here? Oh, I should have stepped here, So I think just being out in these difficult situations over and over on the beach, which is a very challenging situation, was really how I figured out what that missing piece was and what I needed to really focus on and ask those questions on what I could have done better each time.
I gotcha. One of the questions that I get asked, or that I hear most from all photographers, but I guess more specifically portrait photographers, is like, how do I find my style? Or how do I achieve this style? Maybe they'll share a photo. Did you fall into the same trap? Or I guess, how did you eventually find a style that fits you as a photographer?
Yeah, I think we all fall into that trap. You don't really know what you want until you see it sometimes. And so it's very easy to latch on to something. And for me, I, of course, was shifting towards the photographer whose course I bought. And I quickly realized, though, that there was no way I was going to achieve that look because she was shooting in very dark, very much mountainous locations with a lot of open shade. And I'm shooting on bright white beaches, white sand, very, very harsh light, totally different look. And so I finally realized, okay, I need to stop trying to achieve this look am not going to be able to because I don't have the colors in the locations that I'm shooting. It's literally impossible to achieve this same look. So then I started asking myself, what do I like as far as what's available to me? So what beach sessions do I gravitate towards? And so I really think that for anybody who's trying to figure out what their style is, they have to consider where they're shooting. And then they need to look and ask themselves, when they see an image at a similar location to what they're shooting, what do they like about it? Because sometimes it's not just the lighting or the location. Sometimes it's the colors that were in the outfits. Sometimes it's the way that they were posed, or it's the emotion in the image. So asking yourself over and over again, what do I like about this image? If you're scrolling Instagram, I think like that helps you figure out what you are trying to achieve. So instead of just trying to replicate something and saving a bunch of images and trying to straight up copy them, which I see a lot with newer photographers, asking yourself, what do you like? And then trying to create your own session, create your own style and shoot with some of those similar elements that you've pulled from so many different photographers. So maybe I like the emotion in this photographer's work, but I really like the crispness and the contrast in this photographer's editing style. And I really, really like the colors that this photographer always has their clients in. So pulling all of these things together to find your own voice is really is the way to do it. But also remember that your voice is going to change as you change. So my style now is not as storytelling as it used to be. Well, it depends on the session, I guess I should say. As I have evolved and I've attracted a wealthier, higher-end client, their desires are a little different than some of the clients that I had when I first started. So it's something that may shift, and it's up to you. I could have stuck with my storytelling style and said, no, this is my style. I'm not going to shift it. But what I was finding was that I had a lot of photographers or clients who kept looking at the camera. No matter how much I educated, no matter how much is on my website about not looking at the camera, they wanted to look at the camera. And so I was like, you know what? If this is what they want, then this is what I need to give them. If I want to keep working with this type of client who will pay this type of price, and this is what I want to make. So I shifted my shooting and posing style a little bit to fit this new type of, or this type of client that I was attracting, because I wanted my clients to be happy. And if that's what they wanted, then I wanted to give it to them. So my posing style is fluid, honestly. It depends on the client. I base it off the client. Now, overall, it's still pretty cohesive, but I may lean in and do a little bit more looking at the camera for a certain type of client, whereas the other client, I know they want those more emotive, more storytelling images. So I'm going to shift more that way. I really feed off the energy and respond to the cues that I'm getting from them during the session. And I go from there. I don't even know what the original question was. I just totally went on a tangent there.
No, we were talking about finding your style, and I thought
yeah.
that was great. So like I now have more questions about this, changing from a storytelling type style to more of a camera aware. I mean, there's many different types of portraits, but it's more like I guess a traditional portrait of a family. Can you tell me a little bit more about this idea? Because there is this balance that we have to play between fulfilling our creative vision as a photographer, as a hired professional, and delivering people what it is that they want, right? So finding that right person, that right photographer who can do both. They make something that they love and then can deliver something that we're going to love as a client as well. So can you talk to me a little bit about that? Like, how do you balance those two?
So I think that it's one of those things where some sessions are really going to appeal to your artistic side as a photographer, and other sessions are pay the bills sessions. And that sounds, I guess it could sound really bad, but
I totally get it.
let me explain this a little bit further. And this used to really stress me out when I was a new photographer. So this is really important. I wanted every session to fit this perfect mold when I was a new photographer. I was trying to make my brand. It was storytelling. You wear my exact colors. You pose exactly like I want you to. And I was so frustrated, and I would leave sessions really feeling very disappointed if I had clients that didn't perfectly fit that mold. Like they wanted something a little bit different, because I'm like, you hired me. You should be wanting exactly what I'm putting out there, right?
Right.
But the truth is, it really doesn't work like that, because people don't totally understand this artistic side versus client side. They know what they want, and they're hiring you because they think you can give it to them. For me, like I said, as I kept raising my prices, I kept realizing that I was getting a little bit of a different client. And there started to be this friction because I was shooting always in this storytelling style, but then they would get their gallery and they would be like, oh, can you swap the face on this one? And I'm like, but my style isn't perfection, right? My style isn't supposed to be perfect looking at the camera. But then I could tell that they wanted that because they want it so bad they're willing to pay me extra to swap someone's face to get that perfect shot. So then I said, okay, this is frustrating for me because it's creating more work for me. I feel like I'm not meeting their expectations because if I was, they would be getting the exact images that they wanted. And then there was just like this disconnect. And I was like, I don't like this feeling and I want my clients to love their images. So what I started doing was when I noticed that I had those clients that were looking at the camera a lot, and not because they didn't know what to do. There's a difference between looking at the camera like looking for direction and looking at the camera because they want to be seen. And there are certain clients who want to look at the camera and they want to be seen. They want those shots because that is the culture of what they have in their mind. Like that is the style that they're looking for, even though they love your images. So sometimes people hire me because they love my colors. They love the way I use light. They're not paying attention so much to how I'm posing clients. So then they get out there and they're expecting to be looking at the camera a lot. And if I don't give that to them, then they get those images and then there's that disconnect, right? So it was one of those things where I started noticing this happening. There was this friction. So I was like, I can keep being frustrated. I can keep giving myself more work, or I can loosen the reins and say, you know what? I'm allowed to have a storytelling style and I'm allowed to also have images where people look at the camera. And it's up to me to find the right balance of that and to read my clients well enough. And it's something you could even ask in your questionnaire if you wanted a concrete answer, to make sure that I'm giving every single client exactly what they're looking for. Because I have certain clients, I photograph a lot of photographers and their families, and they don't necessarily want as many of those looking at the camera shots. So those sessions, I don't approach the same way. I still do a few of those, but I'm not going to make sure that I get those shots and make sure that when I get those shots, it's perfect. It was a slow shift, and I think what really, really caused the pivot for me is that I also do a lot of extended family sessions. Because I'm in Southwest Florida, a lot of people retire here. Their families come down for Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas. My two busiest weeks of the year are Thanksgiving and Easter.
Wow.
And so I'm getting a bunch of those big family sessions. And those sessions are not storytelling emotive sessions. They are, we want the perfect shot of everybody looking at the camera. Everybody's eyes better be open. Everybody needs to be smiling. Everybody's hair needs to be perfect. And they're paying top dollar for that. So I get it. They want that perfection. So I had to totally separate my approach to those because that was causing a lot of friction for me because I'm like, but this isn't my style. Like this isn't what I do, but it's a lot of money. So do I either not take on these sessions or do I figure out a new way to approach them? So I decided to totally separate those sessions from my intimate storytelling sessions. I approach them differently. I explain that I have a lifestyle posing style. So we're going to get the formal shot of everybody looking at the camera with every single combination. We're doing a shot with everybody looking at the camera, and then we're doing something, whether you're looking at each other, whether you're walking together, we're doing something less posed. And that has been the best hybrid I have found, is being able to have those two separated. And then with my family sessions, each one I'm kind of just going off the vibes I'm getting from my clients. So it's just really comes from being able to read your clients well, comes with experience. And you really have to, at the end of the day, you have to remove yourself from the situation a little bit. Because if you are so tied to my art, this is how it's supposed to look, this is my style, don't hire me if you don't want my style. Well, you know what? Do you want to make money or not? Is this your hobby or is this your business? Because if this is your hobby, then by all means, take on exactly what you want to take on, create your art, be fulfilled, let this be your creative outlet. But if you're trying to make a business and you want to make money, then you have to remove yourself a little bit from it in certain situations and with certain clients to make sure that they are getting what they want. Because at the end of the day, they are paying you for a certain look, and you need to make sure that you give them that look and that you meet the needs that they are hiring you to meet.
I don't think that that's talked about enough. So many people are just like, just follow your passions, just do what it is that you love, and it'll all work out. And it's still a job at times, it's called work for a reason, because it's not joy. I don't, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's still plenty of things that you're like not always going to enjoy about it. So not saying that you don't enjoy.
I will say I actually have more joy doing it this way. Because
really?
they're happy, I'm not frustrated. I let go. I let go of that pressure to make sure that every session is a beautiful, perfect storytelling session that's going to perform super well on Instagram and make me popular in the family photography space. Forget it. I just want to make a good living and I want to have work-life balance. That's my why. If my why was I want to create amazing images that get me on the cover of magazines and get me awards and get me at the top of everybody's inspo list, like, then I would not probably be shooting the way that I'm currently now shooting. But my why is work-life balance. It's why I started the business, right? I was burnt out. I needed to be able to make a good living and not be working myself to death. I work to live. I love photography. I have a beautiful blessing that my job is great and I enjoy it. But at the end of the day, I do it so that I can have free time and be with my family and chase other passions that I have. I have to look at it that way. And because I let go of that, I let go of that stress and let go of that pressure, and I'm making sure that I'm meeting the exact needs of every client, everybody's so happy, I'm happier and I'm making more money. So it's like
win-win.
I think you just have to sometimes look at it from a business perspective. And I think that is the biggest thing that is missing from the family photography space, which I'm really hoping to fulfill, is that so many people are so focused on the art and they're broke. And it's like, look, it's totally fine if you want to focus more on the art than on the business side of things. But at the end of the day, you will not have time and freedom to create your art if you are broke. You're going to have to take on stuff you don't want to shoot, right? Build a business that works well, that kind of, is that hybrid, and then you have the time to go create the art that you want to create, right? So it's not even like a either or. It's like if you don't do this, you're not going to have the time to create the art or the time to have the free time to do whatever you want. It's a requirement to be successful as a photographer. You have to run a business that is like a well-oiled machine that brings in consistent revenue. And to do that, you have to remember that at the end of the day, this is a business.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. So let's go a little bit deeper into that, right? When it comes to hobbyists, when it comes to, I guess, the more artistic side, we have this idea that it's very whimsical. It's very whatever's in front of the camera, this is what I'm going to capture. You can have ideas of what you want, but very rarely is it extremely planned out. So when it comes to the business side of things, you sell images, right? You sell pairings of large extended families. So can we talk a little bit about maybe poses in terms of what it is that you quote unquote have to get from each session, and maybe what are some of the most popular that your families end up purchasing?
So, I mean, it varies by session for sure, whether it's an extended family session, whether it's a super storytelling session, or it's a family that is wanting those perfect images. With my storytelling style sessions, I will notice that I do sell the full gallery more often because it is a story. They need all these little details and images to tell the full story. My other clients who are really just looking for those perfect shots, they're picking the perfect shots. That's what they want, right? They may pick a few lifestyle shots here and there, but they're picking the perfect ones of the perfect combination of everybody looking at the camera. And then, my extended family shots, it's usually just a mix because I photograph a mix of looking at the camera and more lifestyle stuff. So they're usually picking kind of a mix of looking at the camera versus lifestyle stuff. So I always have some core poses that I like to do, whether it is no matter what the session is. So whether it's very storytelling, whether it's a little bit more lifestyle, or like my extended families, which are definitely lifestyle with looking at the camera. I have some core poses that I always do with my families. I love movement. I love sessions with little kids because there's so much more you can do, throwing them in the air. Like, I love joy. I shoot for joy. And that's where I've really shifted from that original photographer that I learned from. Her images to me felt really dark, and everybody describes it as emotive. And they're very, very beautiful. But I realized that, especially coming out of that dark place that I had been, I wanted joy. I wanted happiness. And I didn't have the perfect family growing up. So being able to see these perfect families, or not perfect, these happy families, just out having fun and the joy and stuff, that's what I gravitated towards. And so, just in like we talked about at the beginning and finding your style and your voice, I noticed myself kind of falling out of love with that style that was so dark and emotive. And I don't mean dark in terms of just mean there's not as much smiling, in that work. And it's still so beautiful, and there's still a place for it, and it's still important to have those photos, and everybody's different. So There are a lot of people who love and really gravitate towards that. And
Yeah.
for me, I gravitate towards more laughter, more joy, more smiling, more happiness. And so sometimes there's a mix in my sessions. Maybe there are some more emotive shots, but overall, like I always gravitate towards the joyful things. So anything that gets the kids laughing, like anytime a kid is naturally laughing, like they are just having a great time. And that's really what I aim for with my family sessions, is just making sure it's an atmosphere where they can have fun. And luckily, because we're on the beach, like most of the time kids are having fun on the beach, you know, especially by the end of the session when we're in the water, you know. So you'll see that a lot with my work, a lot of happy, smiling, like people, anything with movement, anything that makes the kids laugh or smile. And I would say that's, you know, that's kind of the core of all of my
Yeah.
sessions. You will find that consistently in any session I do.
It's funny. I think when a lot of new photographers think of style, it's very, I don't want to say cookie cutter, but very, very visual, right? Like the color, the light. But sometimes your style can be the moments that you capture. As you said, the movement, the joy, the smiles, the throwing sand, playing in the water. It's like if that is your style that you're trying to convey, then it doesn't just have to be what shift do you like your greens or your oranges, anything
Yes.
like that. So I appreciate you sharing that. So this will be my last question for you as we're coming to the end of our time here. How do you then ensure that you can capture an emotion? How do you ensure that you can convey an emotion within an image with people who you don't control? What do you do as a photographer to convey the emotion that you're trying to convey?
Well, you can't always. If I go into a session and I'm forcefully trying to get a certain emotion, and that's why I feel like sometimes in the family photography space, there's a lot of forced emotion happening right now because people are trying to replicate what they see other photographers do. But if you go in and you're trying to force something, it's not going to be genuine, and it may not even align with that person, right? That's what I say. It goes back to being able to read your clients and just feel their energy, which sounds very woo-woo, but
No, I get it. I get
you
it.
know,
Yeah.
like I do think that that is something that some people naturally have. You know, I would say I'm an empath. I feel other people's energies very easily because I was not the kid who fit in. And so I felt very deeply all the emotions of being an outcast. And so I'm always aware of other people, trying to prevent other people from feeling those kinds of emotions. And so I've just become someone who's very always aware of other people and how they feel. So I take that into my sessions with me. And so because I've spent my entire life kind of growing that muscle of being able to sense how people are feeling, it's a little bit easier for me. But I think that everybody has the ability to develop that skill of being able to read the room. Some people are going to be more cuddly and more emotive and more lovey-dovey, and other families are not. Other families are not like big on PDA. So you have to read their energy, and some people just aren't comfortable yet. So you have to be able to read the difference between we're just not comfortable yet, we need a little time to loosen up, or we need you to help tweak us a little bit, or we just aren't, that's just not us, right? So I'm very closely like watching, where do they light up? Where do I feel that they are safe, they feel safe? Where do I feel, you know, I'm watching it with every pose I do, especially that first 15 minutes, especially with couples. It's less with families, because families, it's more like, we're going off the kids, you know, we're keeping the kids moving, we're keeping the kids happy, we're keeping them energized. But I think that's really how you capture whatever that family's essence is. And I get that over and over from clients. Like, you captured us so well. This is so us. Like this, you got their like perfect personalities. And it's because I didn't force anything. I didn't force them to pose in a certain way. I just let them be kids. I let them do what was funny to them. And if that was just picking up a big hand of shells and throwing them in the air with the biggest laugh ever, like it's perfect, you know? And that's why I really love little kids, because you do get that more genuine personality. The older the kids get, the more you have to work with them to get them to loosen up, to get them to do something that is more natural, because older kids aren't going to pick up a handful of shells and throw them in the air, right? Like, I've got to tell them exactly what they need to do so that they can feel like they're doing something and feel relaxed. But, you know, I think that's the most important thing, is not trying to force something.
That's hard, right? Because again, a lot of photographers want to put a stake in the ground, like this is my style, right? I get that. So I know that I said that was my last question, but I got one last follow-up question to that, which is something that a lot of photographers worry about, like keeps them up at night, especially family photographers and new, say, wedding and engagement photographers, is what do you do when you show up and either dad isn't in a great mood or the boyfriend isn't in a great mood, right? It's like typically, well, this may be a generalization, but it's like the wife will be the one to organize the shoot. And then sometimes the dad is kind of left out of this, like, oh, we got to show up here, we got to do this. So sometimes they're not as excited for the session as maybe the rest of the family. So do you have any tricks when you show up and you, as you said, you feel that energy and dad isn't super excited or is super aware of what's going on? How do you flip the script and get him on your side and end up having a good time?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is. Yeah. That's why people are losing sleep over this. Yeah.
Because everybody's different. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't try to joke with somebody and maybe they're not a joking person. That's just going to make them more irritated. That's not really my personality. Anyways, I typically just kind of ignore them, honestly. I don't know if that's a great strategy, but I will also just preface with this doesn't happen a ton for me, maybe once or twice a year. And that's because a lot of my clients are families on vacation. They're coming down to the beach. They're hiring me for a photo shoot on the beach. So they're relaxed. They're not worried about a billion different stressors. They're not like, you know what I mean? They are on vacation with their family. So they're not trying to juggle a million other things, work and other schedules. They're there to have fun. They're there to relax. They're out on the beach, which most of them are coming from somewhere without the beach. So they're genuine, like generally pretty happy to be there, even if they don't love photos. But I will make sure that, I'll be honest, I probably focus more on the mom and the kids in these situations. I'm like, we got dad, we got the full group shots, and then I'm like, okay, let's focus on mom. Dad, you can take a break for a second. Because that's probably what mom is really, really wanting anyway. She doesn't have a lot of photos with her and the kids, right? She probably has a lot of photos with dad with the kids already. So yeah, it is what it is. And the moms know. They know
it comes down to knowing your clients.
When their husband is not being very nice or something. So, you know, they're always understanding. But yeah, honestly, I think that's just a really hard one. And then
it is.
I don't really know that there's a perfect response for that.
Yeah, there's definitely not a one size fits all response for sure. I know some of the things that I had tried were always like self-deprecating humor. Like, I hate getting my photo taken too. Like, I get it. But, you know, we're just going to try to get a few photos here and we're going to have a good time, try to get them to turn around. So totally understand. Sarah, we are at the end of our time here. So before I let you go, I know listeners are thinking like, wow, I love Sarah's approach. This sounds great. I want to see more of her work. Can you share with us where we can find out more about you online and what it is that you have to offer?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram and TikTok, Facebook too, but I never post on Facebook, at Chasing Creative Media. And then also my website has lots of great resources. I've got a few free trainings. If you're interested in learning more about lighting, I've got a great free class for there. If you're interested in learning more about styling and how to get your clients in the right outfits, I've got a free training for that too. And that's all at chasingcreativemedia.com. And I'm always happy to say hey, so don't ever be afraid to reach out and say hey to me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram a lot. So that's always the quickest way to reach me if you just want to say hi.
Real quick, before we get into the recap, I wanted to invite you to join us into the incredibly supportive, private, and free beginner photography podcast community. It's a great place to share your biggest takeaway from today's interview with Sarah. To join, all you got to do is head over to beginnerphotopod.com/group now. Okay, let's go ahead and recap the key takeaways so that you can implement what you learned today on the podcast into your own photography. Takeaway number one, biggest one, learn how to adapt your style to fit your client's needs. I'm not saying completely change who you are as a photographer for each client, but flexibility in your photography style is important to meet their expectations while maintaining your artistic integrity. So, before every shoot, make sure that you talk to your clients before so that you can truly understand what their expectations are so that you know if it's something that you can deliver. Takeaway number two is to prioritize lighting. Understanding and mastering different lighting conditions will really improve the quality of your photos, particularly in challenging environments like the beach. So start spending time to just understanding the direction of light. That is a great place to start. Just understand direction of light. All right, and takeaway number 3 is that natural interactions are always better than forced posing. When it comes to family photography, genuine moments are the holy grail. Allowing your clients, especially children, to be themselves during sessions is the best way forward. So encourage those natural interactions and candid moments during shoots by playing games, by asking questions. And you're going to start getting better reactions than if you just try to keep them stiff and rigid and posed. So that is it for today. Until next time, remember, the more that you shoot today, the better of a photographer you will be tomorrow. Talk soon. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. Start a conversation. Grow together. That is it for this week. Remember, the more that you shoot today, the better of a photographer you will be tomorrow. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.